Before we get into today's episode, I've created a short questionnaire that will help me get to know you better. Those that fill out the questionnaire will get entered into a draw to win an Amazon gift card. So there's a link in the description for the episode. Click it, fill out the questionnaire, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Now for today's episode. This is the Michael Brighton Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. And today I'm joined with Ahmed Ismail, who essentially is the CEO and founder of Fluid, which is using AI to solve the crypto and NFT space. So we're talking AI and digital assets today. So Ahmed, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Michael.
So talk to me about what the biggest problem is in crypto and NFTs and why choose AI to solve that? It sounds like we're just choosing technology to solve technology problems.
Yeah, you are using technology to solve a technology problem. That's very true. Look, so one of the biggest problems in crypto is that liquidity is highly fragmented. And what does that mean? Unlike the equity space, unlike the FX space, unlike the bond space, you can buy and sell if you're an institution. Go in and out positions in equities or in bonds and FX quite easily. In crypto, it's not that easy, and liquidity is held in fragmented. It's held in few silos. It's very siloed. And why is that a problem? Well, in markets such as the ones we witnessed in 2022, when Luna crashed, for instance, or FTX crashed, we saw massive amounts of volatility. Right, it's an age-old problem in crypto. There have been many liquidity aggregators out there, but none have really solved the problem, and that's what we're doing right now. What is a liquidity aggregator? A liquidity aggregator is just like in the flight space. If you're buying a flight off Skyscanner is an aggregator, so it goes to all the different airlines and websites and gets you the cheapest deal. So it's a kind of marketplace of marketplaces, right? And that's what we are. So we do this on a retail level, we do this on an institutional level, and we even do this on an exchange level. And there are other liquidity aggregators out there, but what we do is we aggregate both centralized and decentralized exchanges and aggregate them into one place. So that means that if you want to trade, you don't have to open an account in 30 different exchanges. You can just open an account on Fluid, and Fluid has what's called a smart order router, which will route those transactions onto all the different sexes and dexes to get you the best deal. Exchange of exchanges. Now, why do we use AI? Well, because liquidity is highly fragmented, there's a huge amount of latency, right? And execution risk. And what happens is that if there's what we calculated, even on Bitcoin, if there is latency, not just comes from the blockchain, but settlement time, network latency, all of this stuff, and half a second of latency translates to around 2% of gap risk. Right?
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So if you're buying Bitcoin and you think you're buying it at 28,500, you're taking a 2% punt either way. And so exchange desks and exchanges know this. That have no liquidity. OTC desks know this, that have no liquidity. Brokers know this, that have no liquidity. Middlemen, bots, whatever. They all know this. So they all add their little spreads. And that's why buying crypto is so expensive. The fees. Exclude blockchain fees, exclude fees coming from, gas fees, all of this stuff. I'm talking about buying off-chain cryptocurrency. As a retail user or as an institution, you pay a huge amount of fees to middlemen. And the reason is this. So we got together with, we raised some money early last year, about $10 million. We have invested a lot of that money in R&D, research and development, with two universities. One is Imperial College in London. Another is the Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden. We have about 15 postdoc researchers who are working with us full time to build models that predict cryptocurrency prices into the future. And so far, the results have been, scarily good. That we are able, with our technology, to predict cryptocurrency prices 30 seconds in advance with up to 99.95% accuracy.
There's probably a
For
lot
us,
into
what
that.
we use this for is that we use this for our smart order router. We use this to cut through the latency, so you can basically buy a cryptocurrency and have instant settlement, instant price execute, an instant best execution. You don't get zapped by anyone trying to play the market. What you buy is what you get, and you always assume to get the best price. Now, the theory of this is that over time, what that will do is that will effectively make, if you get the better execution you have, the more flow you will get, and the more trading you get, the better liquidity you get, and it helps the ecosystem. And so that's what our aim is. This is what we're here for.
So I'm imagining that the people that trade actually get more of the money, like once everyone takes their cut and all that kind of thing, with the middlemen and systems and banks, if it involves banks, that sort of thing.
Not
At
even
the end
that.
of the day,
Yeah.
someone that trades would get more of the money because of the reduction in the latency and the fact that we're able to predict a higher amount as well, let's say.
Yeah.
It all is beneficial.
It's very beneficial, exactly. So using prediction models, we don't trade on these models. We don't want to trade on these models, but we're able to use AI to do that. Now, why do we use AI? We've been working with AI for a number of years now, for over 2.5 years. And one thing about AI and cryptocurrency markets is that crypto markets are notoriously are very, very are very complex. They're not linear. Now, in equities, what you do is that you get these people who are able to predict, using candlestick charts and all of this stuff, to predict cryptocurrency or equities prices, and with what's called technical analysis, using statistical analysis to be able to make a prediction. In equities, it's pretty high. It's probably 80-90% correct, right? In cryptocurrencies, because it's so volatile, it's probably around 50-60% right. Now, as we all know, cryptocurrency prices, because of their lack of liquidity and because of other external factors, are like this and have no logic. They're almost random. We think they're random, but they're not. And this is where AI comes in, because AI can take very unstructured, complex, non-linear data and find hidden patterns. Now, what we do is that we take things like sentiment analysis. So we plug our models into Discord, into Twitter, right? And we find hidden patterns in certain hashtags that come up that you and I don't see, but AI sees and can predict the price of Bitcoin will go up 2% as a result. So we take all these different, what are called features, we put them into one. We also look at like the price of gold, CPI indices, the price of equities, price of futures, options, derivatives markets. And we put that all into one big algorithm to give you a prediction of what's going to happen in 30 seconds time with a very, very high percent accuracy.
That sounds like way too much for one person to do. Is that why you let AI do it? Because you have like a team of people that still can't seem to get it right because they're human and there's a lot of data to process, but you put it into
Of course,
a
there's
computer and they
tons
do
of
it.
data because we don't just do this for one crypto pair or one exchange. We do this for pretty much all the all the top centralized exchanges, all the top currency pairs, and so we are able to predict any order book. Obviously, there are certain order books we don't have a lot of data, and so the accuracy is not as good. So when the depth is not as deep, your accuracy isn't as good. But for the big sexes and dexes, we are able to do that with a very high degree of conviction and accuracy.
A lot of the big investors often talk about risk reduction. So a lot of people tend to think that there's a lot of risk involved in investing, people that aren't necessarily experienced in it. And then every of the big investors will say that there's a lot that goes into reducing risk, but that's what they spend a lot of their time on, so that it's not actually risky at all. I'm picturing the AI models that you have and the systems and algorithms, they make it possible to do that with cryptocurrency and digital assets as well. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct. Yeah. So um, AI basically what AI does, it takes it finds hidden patterns in things that you and I find tedious and have to use our own brain power to find them in, and that's what AI does really, really well. So AI can be used to identify patterns that human beings don't necessarily find. So for things like risk management, I mean, risk management is a very, very big topic. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but AI has certainly many applications within the risk space. For us, we look at it for latency, but I know plenty of like KYC providers who use AI for facial recognition. So when you sometimes sign on doing your KYC to a lot of these exchanges, you put a picture of your passport. And I was just doing it for my parents today.
Yeah.
And you do a selfie, right? And so what it does is that it has a matching algorithm and sees the picture on your government ID. Is it really you, right? There are a lot of applications that the AI has for risk reduction, absolutely. But for us, we use it mainly to solve this big problem.
What do you find actually happens then if there's so many different, I guess you could call them corporations or organizations that seem to have a bit of a monopoly in the financial market, whether it's traditional or otherwise, there's becoming this sense of it's not centralized, but, and the but is some people have more knowledge, information, experience to be able to essentially do more predictions and benefit more than others. Not necessarily centralized, but there are some big players out there that are able to do more than, should we say, little people. What does AI do to that? Does it flatten the curve? Does it give everybody an equal chance? Does it build people up? Like, what are some of the effects of this?
AI, so I think AI is just a tool. I always say 150 years ago, 200 years ago, when people went to war, they'd have muskets, right? Now they have, high end machine guns, right? AI is just a tool, and one of the big more philanthropic discussion points that are very current in the media. You might have seen Elon Musk and a few other big players. I think the CEO of Apple was one of them as well. Signed a big open letter for humanity's sake, to pause AI, um, to pause the R&D of AI. Now, AI, if it's used responsibly and it's not self-generating, is pretty cool. You can do it to help make sure your liquidity is less fragmented, which is what we do. But of course, there are many very interesting, very interesting use cases. Which, if AI becomes God, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
one of the big conundrums of AI is that if AI is bigger than the human brain and it's self-generating, what can that do to humanity? I'm reading a very good book by a guy called Henry Kissinger. And for those who don't know who he is, Henry Kissinger is probably, he's an American politician, quite controversial, was involved in the, in supporting, well, in supporting many of the questionable actions of the US government. But he wrote a very interesting book that he put out recently called The Age of AI. And he wrote it with Eric Schmidt, who's the co-founder of Google. And in that book, and I really strongly recommend anyone who's interested in the whole human paradoxes of AI to read it. He's talking about AI use in, first of all, chess. So we used AI to build a machine that can play and beat, the world's best chess players, including Garry Kasparov, who was at the time one of the biggest chess players around. So it learned the moves, it created strategies that humans would not have thought of. And one of those strategies, I don't know are you into chess, or if I can.
Yeah, chess is something that I know a little bit about personally. Yeah.
So for those who do know chess, one of the most controversial or the hardest decisions to have is to sacrifice the most powerful player on your chessboard, who's the queen, right? You never, under any circumstances, do that to win a game, because your queen can go in any direction and is probably the most powerful piece on the board. Now, in many of the strategies that this chess computer created was sacrificing your queen at the very beginning of. Right. And so no normal human would do that. Now you can translate this this paradox that AI brings into global conflict, right? And a lot of the time, big governments, military organizations use AI to simulate a conflict, right? With China, with Russia, with whatever. And AI was actually used in the arms race to see, okay, who's going to have, if the Russians launch this missile, what are we going to do? And AI computers were used to help simulate that. And these are war simulations. These are all on a computer just to help military leaders know what to do. Now, what happens if the AI model says, let the Russians obliterate Newcastle? What would the UK government do now? Right? Now, no disrespect to Newcastle, love their football team and everything. It's a great city. But would the UK government allow that? Probably not, right? But AI, for us to win the war against any state that wants to attack us, we may have to make a sacrifice like that. And that's what the AI model will tell our leaders. So AI can be pretty dangerous if it's in the wrong hands and if it's used incorrectly.
what if they get smart enough, the AI, I mean, not the UK government. What if the AI gets smart enough to give us that as the option, even if it wasn't the best one, because maybe they don't like Newcastle's football team and they think, you know what, we'll just get rid. We'll just tell all these military leaders to bomb Newcastle. The world will be a better place, hopefully, and we get rid of them. Maybe we
That's
get
the
to that
point.
point.
The whole point is that AI, you're using different sort of, or I won't go into what AI include, like neural networks and deep learning and all of that, and GPT and all of these things. But what I could say is that with AI, it may have consequences, as you rightly said. In order to, it will tell you the route of least resistance. AI does not have morality or ethics or emotion. AI is used as a tool to get from A to B, to have an output based on an input. And the input is, let's win the war. So AI may come back with, let them bomb Newcastle first so you can obliterate them. Right? And that is an unfortunate, scary consequence of letting AI get out of control. Now, these are all very philanthropic, interesting discussion points, and we're kind of going off on a tangent slightly, but what AI does do is that it has the ability to, for what we do as Fluid, we will need teams and teams and teams of analysts and lots of computers to do effectively what one model does. Right? It's very innovative. If a typical investment bank or hedge fund will probably have to have 7 or 8 quants, working 24 hours a day to crunch numbers, work with computers and algorithms and all of that to try to get what we do with one model. And that's the powerful thing about what Fluid is building. So it replaces, a lot of unnecessary, and these guys aren't cheap. They earn a lot of money, and they don't always get it right. They're humans. And so what we do, AI is super important because it solves a very, very big basic problem in crypto. Now, we're not going to rule the world or bomb Newcastle with that, but from what we do is that I think it has a very, very interesting and important benefit to the crypto community.
What I'd like to discuss a little bit, if that's okay, is the idea of trusting AI to do this. And do you have an element of lines that it's not allowed to cross as a way of keeping it focused and keeping it narrow enough that it's just a very, very good calculator instead of it suddenly start throwing out ideas that make no sense whatsoever and they start making more mistakes because they've got too much, I don't know, flexibility or free reign, you could say. How do you balance that with someone's ability to trust it? Because it might not be necessarily trusting you, it's trusting AI to do the things that humans have been doing for so long. Like, how do you balance those two things? Because I'm picturing a world where AI could do so much as long as it's only given so much to do.
Yeah, so very good question. But I'd say this. Let's not sensationalize AI to the point that we mix up these paradoxical, esoteric, philanthropic discussion points with the benefits of AI. Let's not confuse the two. Our AI we use a hybrid model that uses all sort of aspects of machine learning and deep learning. So it uses things like neural networks, vector analysis. It uses, different hybrid models combined together. So what's called LSTM, long short-term memory, and an aspect of mathematical data analysis called Gaussian analysis, which is a sort of statistical method which improves their accuracy. And all of these different concepts are put together in one single model, right, to predict the accuracy of a market. Now, the model that we have is only as good as the data that it has access to. So we have access to historic data, but what we have access to are different features. Now, the beauty of AI is that you can have different features. Now, it's not, when I say nonlinear, what does that mean? It's not one input, one output. It's not like the price, the candlestick is green, then it's going to go up, right? It takes in different environmental factors. Now, this is what we do for the AI, is that we expose our model to different features. So the price of gold, the price of equities, the price of Twitter hashtags. Certain people on Twitter, Elon Musk, Doge to the moon, right? That will have what's Elon Musk saying Doge to the moon going to have an impact on Bitcoin, right? We can't really quantify it. We can try to make our own statistic, but this is what AI does. It just computes things and trains itself to find better, more complex patterns in data that it can actually give you a real output, and all forms of data. So not just what the historic price was, which is what I mean by linear, but also sentiment, human sentiment. It can gauge human sentiment and say, you know what, from all these different factors, we're quite bearish, and I think the price is going to go down. This is what verbalizing what our AI model will actually do, or actually does. And it will look at, what happens to the price of gold, futures, options. All of these things we know have an impact on crypto or crypto prices, but we don't know how much. Now, there are other bigger factors as well, which have a more long-term effect on crypto. And we're not there yet in terms of trying to predict those, because if we did, I wouldn't need to be on a podcast with you. I'd be lying on a beach somewhere. Probably not Newcastle, because that would be bombed. Right?
Probably, yeah, it would. If it listened to our conversation, Newcastle would not be around for much longer.
No, and I don't know what we have against Newcastle. I love the place, but yeah.
So have you put the model against the previous, let's say,
we backtested the model?
Yeah. So let's say if you were to run it, I could take like a time chunk of before Bitcoin plummeted to the floor and beyond, would that have predicted the same thing? Like if you ran it against past histories to think, oh, that would have happened, and it predicted it right?
So training our model requires us to backtest it several times to find these patterns. So what the model does is that it goes back to historic data, sees patterns, and learns those patterns, sees more, and then takes that new model. So it's like a loop, and this is what AI does. It's a loop that gets better with time because it gets more better and better trained, and it looks at all these different factors. It's weird. We're all talking about how amazing AI, but actually it's very, very simple. It just requires a lot of algorithms and a lot of computing power. To answer your question, we have to backtest our data. Now, remember that our models only look as far as 30 seconds in advance with a high degree of accuracy. Anything longer than that, we need a lot more funding and research to do.
Right. So the most accurate that you can get is about 30 seconds in advance. How far does it drop, if you don't mind me asking? Like if it goes from 95% in 30 seconds, does it go to like 60 after that? Like how big
Yeah,
is
I mean,
the
it
difference?
becomes very unreliable. So when I say 95%, this is with a high degree of confidence. It means it's consistently getting 95%. Now the problem is that as you go down, as you go further along, there are many other complex factors, and you probably need to train your model a lot more to get better pricing prediction. And this is like an exponential cost for us, right? So for what we want to do, we don't want to go out that far. We don't need to go out that far. 30 seconds is ample. And what we do is that we use that data, we effectively, you can use that data to do, we don't trade on it. We're not built to become a trading house. We don't have the people or the skill set or the bandwidth to build trading algorithms, which are very different. But what we do are prediction algorithms. So you could probably take our data, do what you want with it, spend a day or two, try to create your own trading signals and your own algos, and make money that way. But that's what we do.
How much computing power does it take? I'm picturing like the old supercomputers, like the walking computers where you've got like just stacks and stacks of gigantic hard drives that are all powering this computer. How much does it actually take to run an AI model that essentially analyzes financial markets and tracks it with social history and things of that nature? Like, how much does it actually take to do
The answer is a lot, okay, but
it?
we don't remember that this is 2023 now. We don't have hard drives sitting in big offices with big windmills and cooling them off, right? We use the cloud services, very big ones that are able to provide us this, computing power. A lot of these cloud services, such as in Microsoft, you've got one, AWS is one. You use there's a few others as well that use military grade computing power, if you like. So huge amounts of computing power to do that. And yeah, it does use a lot. Our monthly bill is very high, um, but yeah, that's effectively what we do.
How do you see this impacting the future? Because there's a lot of history with things like crypto where it is volatile, it is difficult to predict. It's causing some people to not really get involved because of all the fees and they walk away with very little. You seem to be able to essentially flip all of that on its head to make it more predictable, safer, less risky, more people will be getting involved, but it's still a financial market. There'll be a lot more financial investment, a lot more money
Correct.
in the system. They're the kinds of things that I'm predicting just off the top of my head. How do you see this playing out? Where do you see it going?
So what we're solving is one tiny aspect, right? But I talk about this a lot in media interviews and generally. I'm a big proponent of regulation, um, and regulation needs to happen in our crypto sector. It's a very nascent sector. It's very new, but we have unfortunately had many bad actors. And regulation should be there to protect all stakeholders. So the problem that regulators have always had is that they've put out some regulation. It has been completely out of touch with reality. And at the same time, businesses that have tried to, or projects that have tried to get regulated, have completely ignored the rules and probably, arbitraged them, found loopholes, and not sort of come in with the same spirit of the law where you're trying to protect your user base. And then you get, guys like SBF, who is a fraud, who came up through the system and, through smoke and mirrors, stole users' money. Now, you know, the technology that we're in, which is cryptocurrency, an on-chain technology which is immutable, and a public ledger has the ability to self-regulate a lot of this. However, DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations, which control a lot of these projects, are never self-regulated, really. There's always a guy or two or three behind them. And this is what regulatory authorities, who are quite rightly alarmed at what's going on or what's happened, right? Whether it be Luna or FTX, they are there and they're alarmed. But what their approach is terrible, because their approach, is to shut down Signature Bank or Silvergate, right? They're trying to choke the system, rather than regulate and work with projects. I find most regulators, especially in the Western world, backwards, right, and behind the times. The US right now, it's trying to choke the crypto sector. But you look at, I say that, but you look at other more forward-looking projects. So I'm based in the UAE. I'm in the UK today, but talking to you, but I'm based in the UAE. And the UAE is fantastic about this. They've created not one, but two world-class regulatory regimes that have put in place a set of exacting rules, regulations to help regulate crypto businesses. So, Fluid is my sort of second startup, which is doing very well. But my first one, which is doing even better, is it's a unicorn. It's called Haven. It's a fully regulated OTC and custody platform, regulated in Abu Dhabi. Right? It's churns out millions of dollars every month, and it does phenomenally well. But it does that because it has been able to garner the trust of its user base. Now, our user base at Haven include, UAE government entities. Government entities use us to do that. Now, because we're regulated, because they trust us, which means that the business is audited, right? There is proper compliance, there's proper cybersecurity, there's proper controls, checks and balances in place that enable the business to function well, but protecting all stakeholders. So the UAE is very forward-looking when it comes to this. The UAE also recently announced the launch of a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, and it's probably one of the first in the world to do so. That's actually, signed off, stamped by the UAE central bank. Now, if we look at the UK, right, we're about 10 years behind all of this. You can argue that the Conservative government that's in place right now is a little bit more crypto friendly than before, but we're still worrying about Partygate and Boris Johnson. I can go on and tell you how I really feel, and Brexit and all of this nonsense, right? We haven't really given a toss about crypto, and we're behind the rest of the world, and the US is sort of with a Biden administration is trying to choke off crypto. So there's a discussion point here, which is to say that the world is changing, and regulation by countries that have been very forward looking and very progressive is going to change the shift in power in global currency.
Does it make you think that that's where the backward side comes from, where it's almost like it used to be decentralized, but you think that maybe it's tilting towards centralization for the sake of regulation? Like, it's the only way that some countries have thought of being able to regulate it is to centralize it. Like, there isn't a
Right.
decentralized
So
way to
let
regulate
me
it.
let me say something. I think it's a complete pipe dream, and it's absolute bollocks that we say. And sorry if I'm able to use curse words in your program, but um, it's absolute bullshit and bollocks that DeFi is fully autonomous and there will be no centralization. It's utopia. It's people who take drugs and whatever. It's never going to happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What is going to happen, I believe, is yes, DeFi has great technological efficiency aspects to it, and it enables the lend. Like, I don't think any DeFi platform will ever borrow and lend to and have mass adoption and really take away the power away from banks. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think anyone who says that is probably a scammer or just, living on another planet, right? And has no idea what's going on. I do think, however, big banks, big insurance companies will adopt a lot of blockchain technology surrounding DeFi to create what I call hi-fi, hybrid finance, where you're able to leverage all the benefits, all the pros and cons, all the benefits of decentralized finance, right? And effectively, why would banks need big offices? They don't anymore with DeFi. They don't need overly paid, expensive bankers on massive salaries and big bonuses because they can do it themselves through technology. The MacBook, single MacBook can replace a whole floor in a bank, right? And just imagine the millions that banks waste on inefficient, entitled bankers who are overpaid. Right? And I was one with, I was in banking for 15 years, so I know what it's like. So I do believe that banks, the problem with DeFi as well, from an institutional perspective, is that while you can police the ports, you can't police the oceans. Meaning that for AML, anti-money laundering, terrorist financing, all the bad actors, they can use DeFi, swap their money, and effectively run riot on the global system. Now, no government or bank in their right mind would ever allow that. So with banks adopting these controls in place, they keep these bad actors out of the system. So they own the DAOs, right? They control the DAOs, they regulate the DAOs. But the DAOs still exist. People can still use DeFi, but within a banking system. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where, it's too much of a cowboy world for any like real utopian, fully decentralized world to exist. I think anyone who says that is like smoking something funny.
Do you think then that it's about having a system that is almost like pro freedom, I guess you could say? And most don't want to say freedom, but they are pro people, like the users, the people using
A
the system.
libertarian organization, right? So this is a very libertarian, utopian vision, a vision that I would love, right? My money's my own, not your keys, not your crypto. Ultimately, yeah, right? Crypto allows that. What crypto and will it happen? I mean, I don't know. It's way above my pay grade to answer that question. I don't know. But I do believe that we have a very interesting tool in the room that can be a force for giving people more autonomy and banking the unbanked. And who stands to benefit? Everyone. When you're able to include more people in the financial system, and still police it in the same way, everyone benefits. When you have a banking system and a financial system that's very limited, you know, you take away a lot of the you put in unnecessary limits and you take away a lot of the capabilities of what you can achieve. So it's a very, wide question, and I don't really know how to answer it because I'm not paid enough money to do so. Uh,
Yeah, it
but
is. It's something that I don't think any individual can really solve. And as you said, the people that promote all of this, they tend to get a bit, I guess, ideology based. Like they like the idea. They like the
yeah,
fact that, oh, it'd be cool if everyone had full control and full autonomy of everything. But as you quite rightly said, it sounds a bit more like the Wild Wild West, where people have money in digital mattresses and nothing's regulated and there's no sense of rules or principles that you would stand by or live by. And it sounds like if it went that way, you would just allow people to do whatever they wanted. And I just wonder if that would actually be a step back, as you said.
yeah.
We're kind of
So
going backwards with the whole thing.
the word, Michael, is anarchic libertarianism,
That's a
right?
mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but you create anarchists and anarchy and chaos, and you think that you can, yeah. As I said, I'm not paid enough money, nowhere near as rich to answer that question. That's more of a question for people who can really move the needle, like Elon Musk, to answer, not me.
Well, it sounds like we are on a bit of a, I don't want to say a knife edge, but I think there's a lot of important decisions that are needing to be made. And as you quite rightly said, the people that are in these positions, I think they're going to have to answer them sooner or later before things get a bit too out of hand. You never know. But I do wonder if it would be nice to answer those questions or at least put a bit of a handle on the situation before things get a bit out of control, as you said. If it gets out of control, then I just wonder if AI would do things before we even thought about them, and then it starts to get a bit crazy if that continues. It's like if we don't have any handle at all on the situation, it's not going to get better. Really, it's going
I
to get harder.
I completely agree.
So how can people find out about Fluid then, Ahmed? We've had a long discussion. I've really enjoyed it. Some people might need to have a lie down after this conversation, depending on how wired they are. But how can people learn more about you and Fluid, and how can people get in touch?
So the best way is to go to our website, which is https fluid.finance, and everything is there. All our social links are there. You can find us on Twitter. We have a very active Telegram channel. We have thousands of people on our Telegram groups. We have 20,000 or 30,000 now Twitter followers. I keep forgetting. So we're very active on socials. But probably the best place is our website.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Ahmed, thanks for joining me. I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.